Dr. Rita Roy. I'm the CEO of the National Spine Health Foundation. We're delighted to have you all joining us bright and early this morning. And I'm joined by some very awesome people who I think everybody in the room knows, the rest of the awesome people in the room. We're going to just say a few remarks and let you know what we're all about here this morning. The title and theme of our breakfast is celebrating the renaissance in innovation that has occurred in spinal healthcare that has brought us all together. And then this is just some visual eye candy for anyone who hasn't seen a little bit about the National Spine Health Foundation. We are the preeminent patient advocacy organization in spine. Yesterday, Dr. Gogowal's President's Symposium had invited a number of federal agencies to represent, one of which was the National Institutes of Health. And I think what was so interesting about that particular presentation was a representation of all the different agencies within the NIH. And musculoskeletal is like this little teeny tiny agency that's the most underfunded in the entire federal government agency universe. And yet musculoskeletal disease affects virtually everybody, 100 million Americans. That's 1 in 3 U.S. people. Not only, though, is it a problem in the United States, it's the number 1 cause of disability in the U.S. and in the world. So musculoskeletal conditions, and spine in particular, affect more people really than any of the disease states that were shown there in terms of numbers. And yet it's underrepresented in terms of funds and public awareness. Many of us think part of the reason for that is that there hasn't been a patient advocacy organization that has come alongside the industry to really push that public messaging and public awareness. And in the spirit of history, we talk a lot about comparing ourselves to the American Heart Association. I say, well, we're the American Heart Association of Spine. And I just thought I'd show just a little historical timeline about the AHA. AHA was started in 1924 by a couple of physicians and some concerned citizens who realized that cardiac conditions needed to be made aware to the public and that there are things you could do to improve your cardiac health. I'm going to point out a couple of significant dates in the history of the AHA. About 25 years into their existence, they received some major funding from Procter & Gamble, and that really was a turning point for the AHA in terms of their ability to really function in a research and public messaging, public health way. And then you saw their growth in the 60s with those, the first time we really started hearing about cardiac disease and atherosclerosis and those kinds of topics. And then you see into the 70s, the CABG procedures and surgical procedures had really come into expertise and development. And that really sort of set cardiac on the stage as an industry that everybody knew about, everybody felt comfortable about. And there was the AHA as the patient advocacy group alongside with the industry again, doing their responsible messaging to the public. And now everybody knows who the AHA is. It's not only a US-based organization, it's an international organization. And we thought we would compare that a little bit to who we are as the National Spine Health Foundation. The National Spine Health Foundation was started in 2002, actually, by a couple of surgeons and some concerned citizens. It started really as an outgrowth of study groups that many of you know of and were part of, had funding from a company called Safamorganic. And one of the early papers that they did as the first iteration of this organization was the Spinal Research Foundation, and it was a paper called The Minimum Clinically Important Difference. And I think a lot of people here in the room understand what the MCID paper, series of papers have been about, and that was a very important landmark in the history of this organization. Fast forward in history a little bit, the Spinal Champion concept was launched, and this was the first attempt to really say, guess what? If you've got a spine condition, you can overcome that. You can get better and get back to your life. And we're going to call you a spinal champion, and we're going to celebrate that. And so the organization kicked off something that we call the We've Got Your Back race. There were some pictures of that in the beginning. And there were national races across the country with different centers of excellence participating in those races. That was in the era of the Susan Komen race. Lots of medical associations were doing that sort of activity. In 2020, COVID was a really horrible situation for many reasons, but what it gave us was the opportunity we sort of rebranded, and we took that downtime that surgeons had to conceive of and to build our medical and scientific board. And I think the very first person that was, a phone call was made and asked to join our medical and scientific board was none other than Dr. Rick Geyer, who's sitting back there. in the back of the room. And I remember that day so well. I'm going to mention our founder, Dr. Tom Schuler, who's here. As a matter of fact, we celebrated Dr. Schuler's birthday yesterday, so I'm going to have Tom stand up and give a wave to everybody. Tom has been with the organization from its inception, and I remember the day that Tom called you, Rick, and said, "We've got this idea, and we're going to do this thing." And without hesitation, you said, "I'm on board." Medical and Scientific Board, as we moved along, we realized that we want to work with the broader societies and figure out a way to develop our content alongside the societies. The societies do professional education, we do patient education. Let's figure out what that looks like. And so at that time, Dave Poley had joined our board of directors, and I said, "Dave, do you know the NASS director? I'd like to meet him." And Dave said, "Do I know him? Let me introduce you." And we sat down with Eric Milbauer in Boston, and Eric said, "Okay, Rita, sounds good. What do you want? What do you guys need?" And I said, "I just want to be your friend, and let's figure this out." And that was a really monumental day. So we acknowledge NASS being sort of the first one, early adopters in the concept of the coalition and supporting our efforts there. We're very pleased that NASS has named us their patient education partner. I also want to recognize Katie Scheifelbein, who's in the room. Katie's the executive director of LSRS, has been a good friend and good partner from the day that we met. Katie has conceived of some really awesome ideas, the portal pages and whatnot for the societies, and that's been awesome. Bringing us to lots of things happened from COVID until now. Again, we rebranded ourselves, the National Spine Health Foundation, to better reflect the mission that had always been there in terms of research, patient education, and patient advocacy. You see some highlighted dates there. The Spine Health Leadership Council is our corporate giving program. And, I say that corporate support is not just important for the funds. The funds are important, but the thought partnership and the strategic thinking that comes by partnering with industry is so incredibly important to our organization because we are messaging to the public, and we want to do that in an unbiased but vetted, appropriate, and responsible way. We're not sugarcoating messages. One of the things that we talk about on our website is the patient journey, that it is a journey. It's not a one and done situation. Having that thought partnership from the surgeons on our medical and scientific board, the society leadership, and the industry leadership is really what is helping us to be the go-to place for patients who want to understand more about their spine health, both treatment options, non-operative options, and general wellness around their spine. And that is done by all of us. Everybody in this room is part of that, and we are the vehicle for making that happen. I want to acknowledge our industry supporters, many of whom who are in the room. You see we have a combination of both medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies, and we're really looking for broad support as we move forward with our messaging. So thank you to those of you who are in the room who are part of this. Our board of directors is a really committed and amazing group of individuals. This is a picture of us in Barcelona, 10 days ago at the SRS meeting. And I'm just showing the surgeon leaders on our board here, who some of you know. What's significant about this picture and why it's not our whole board, but we began to initiate conversations around how do we take our organization global. That's sort of the next step in the history and growth of the organization. So as we look to figure out how do we do that, what does that mean in terms of language translation? Who are the partners that are going to be part of that? How do we do that? These things take time and development. And so, again, just acknowledging and thanking thought leaders who are doing this with us. I am going to just close by saying that I really want to thank Dr. Gogawala for his support. I first met Dr. Gogawala at the first NASS meeting that I went to in Boston. And Zoe understood this mission immediately. And he said, "I want to be part of it. I want to help. Let's get together. Let's figure it out." I'm so grateful for your support. So grateful to have been able to be part of the President's Symposium yesterday. It was just absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Zoe.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rita, and thank you to the National Spine Health Foundation. I very much agree with what, Rita, you've expressed both yesterday and this morning, that together, by having a patient advocacy component to what we're all trying to do in spine care is just essential. And I think that innovation, as you've highlighted, is a key aspect to what we have to talk about with patients. But we also have hope. And that hope has to be based in knowledge and has to be based on facts. And that's what this organization is doing. So I thought I would just start with some history. We have a lot of innovation to celebrate, and we have a lot of things that we have worked together as a community, and I would say NASS in particular in leading us in advocacy. We all remember the era of the pedicle screw litigation and the challenges that posed in the early 1990s to the latter part of that decade. That was a critical period of time where we had to ensure that this technology was going to be available for our patients. And that required advocacy on the part of physician organizations, NASS, AAOS, and a multitude of very committed people to bring that forward so that we could make that available for patients. There have also been other aspects of technical innovation that surged and then subsided, and I think the cage rage is an example of that. And we can look at that experience and we can learn from it, and we can ask ourselves questions around what are the ways in which we generate the evidence that we need in our field, and also what role we can play with patients in this regard, because patients need to be involved. And I think that as we reflect on that presidential panel yesterday, Nikayla Cook from Picori also highlighted how important it is to have patients involved, not only in the outcomes and the understanding of the outcomes of surgery, but in the research that we do to understand what is important. So after this cage rage time, I think there was an understanding that we had to develop technology and we had to develop studies that were going to approach this technology and understand how this technology would be most beneficial to patients. You'll remember that in the early 2000s that there was a lot of competition between friendly competition and sometimes not so friendly competition between orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons. And patients also played a role in that. Patients wondered, do I see a neurosurgeon for a nerve problem, and do I see an orthopedic surgeon for a bone problem? And there was a real dichotomy there. And what we have done as a community, and I think NASS has done this, I think AANS has done this, I think AAOS has done this, is we have gotten beyond that. And we have started to think of ourselves as spine surgeons. And regardless of whether you came from an orthopedics background or a neurosurgery background, that's how we can best advocate for our patients, and that's how we can best make our field what it has become. So I love the word renaissance, and Dave Poley emphasizes this many times, focusing on so much of what we have been able to achieve in the last many years in spine care. There's been a lot of work in engineering. There's been a lot of work in bone biology. There are challenges. And one of the themes that I think emerged from this symposium yesterday is that a lot of the diagnosis and a lot of the classification of the things that we treat, we have not fully developed. We have symptoms that patients give to us. We have MRIs and radiographs that we look at and study, but we don't have the whole picture all the time about what exactly a patient is suffering from. And that is work that is ongoing, and that is work that's going to require, I think, patient participation for us to really get this right. We've got a lot of physician courses and conferences, and having patients involved in this going forward is going to help drive that innovation further and help us really enjoy an even greater amount of the renaissance that we find ourselves in. So just think about it for a second. We have minimally invasive spinal surgery. Minimally invasive spinal surgery, we have same-day surgery. These concepts 20, 25 years ago would have really, really been unthinkable. We have made great strides in understanding spinal deformity, understanding the impact on the health-related quality of life of spinal deformity. You saw pictures from the SRS in Barcelona, and having patients engaged in understanding what the impact of spinal deformity is in our society. I love David Polly's quote, 65% of the American population has a spinal deformity. Just you think about that, and you think about what that impact is on our society. We need to improve the number of studies that are being done on this, and we need to raise money to understand how to address spinal deformity in our aging population. That was one of our goals yesterday with NIH and with PCORI. We've got robots, as the title of the talk suggested. We've got biologics. We've got growth factors, implants, cervical arthroplasty, lumbar arthroplasty, motion preservation technologies. One of the things that I like to talk a lot about is laminoplasty, also a motion preservation technology. And now endoscopic surgery, little tiny operations to get directly to the area of nerve compression without any tissue destruction almost whatsoever, and getting patients back to life and back to activities. Really incredible in technology if you think about it, and helping us in the OR now beyond just the navigation systems and beyond the robotic systems is augmented reality, and helping surgeons and other people in the operating room see beyond what's on the surface in the anatomy, so that we can better treat and more safely treat our patients. So I think the message from my perspective as we celebrate this renaissance in spine care and in spine surgery is that there are so many reasons for us to be able to convey to patients that there's hope. There's a lot of hope in spine care. We have made incredible strides with technology and with innovation to improve what we're able to do. And for me, it is just it's a great pleasure to be part of this great organization and to have the opportunity to speak on its behalf. So thank you so much.
The next speaker that's going to come up and join me is Dr. Raj Sethi. And Raj, for those of you who don't know, is a surgeon from Virginia Mason in Seattle. Raj met me for the first time at an IMAST meeting, and he sat down and he said, look, what you're doing is so important. I need to be part of this. How can I get involved? And a year later is the chairman of our medical and scientific board and is doing so much to help advance our message and our mission and providing thought, partnership, and leadership. And we're so grateful for your volunteerism and leadership, Raj. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Find your slide.
It's really great to be up here with these esteemed colleagues and so many esteemed colleagues in the room representing so many different great aspects of spine surgery. So for me, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I got involved with this organization for one reason. That was when I was sitting with a patient in Seattle, I had no place to send them for a really up-to-date, patient-focused, and patient perspective site where they could have all of their questions answered. I primarily treat adult deformity and I have a very established deformity practice, so I would use some of the resources that the SRS had, but again, those were not fleshed out in terms of patient videos. What are patients going through? How do they deal with these, large surgeries that we do? And so it was really eye-opening for me to start to work with this organization. And I think that Tom Schuler had an amazing idea many years ago, which was if we can tell the story from the patient's perspective, we are going to get more and more people on board with this journey. Because in this room, whether you're a surgeon, whether you're a researcher, whether you're a physiatrist, whether you're in some sort of an industry function. I see people here who I've worked with in imaging and minimally invasive spinal visualization, so many different areas. All that matters to all of us is how our patients do, right? And if our patients do well, we all do well. So I think that's what this organization is about. And in chairing the medical and scientific board, we've done some work over the last year to make this a dynamic and live board. And you're going to see some work that we're going to do this fall around that topic. One of the areas that we really have tried to work on here is try to find areas in spine. I'm going to highlight one or two this morning and ask these gentlemen to come up. is what are the areas that our patients are facing that really have a lot of unknowns and need a lot of guidance and professional collaboration, basically. And some of our teams have done great work. So I want to highlight first Venu Namani and John Dymar and ask them to just come up here and talk about the Bone Health Task Force, just for a short period about what they've done and what they're doing, and how they are using the National Spine Health Foundation to further this really important work. I think that the problem of osteoporosis is a massive one for spine care providers across the spectrum, and this is an area where, with these two gentlemen leading the effort, we're going to be able to do some great work. So, please.
My name is John Dymar. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and
Vanu Namani from Virginia Mason in Seattle.
about a year ago, I've always been interested in bone health, and I've talked about it for years, much to everybody's disgust, I believe, at times. And, I look across the audience, a lot of people are somnolent and going to sleep whenever we talk about it. But as you know, it's gained a lot of traction now because it is incredibly important for our patients. I would say that if I were to do DEXA scans on a lot of you out there in the audience, I would find that many of you are vitamin D deficient and probably osteoporotic on the edge of it. And so it's a really important topic, and it's really affected our surgery. I think it's one of the primary drivers of our surgical failures in adult deformity. And so about a year ago, we were talking about it, and of course with Rita and Dave Poley, and we've been trying to get some traction to get a group started. And so a little over a year ago, before NASS, we got together, and I had spoken at several meetings with Venu and a whole cadre of people from all across the country at various meetings, and I carefully put their names down because I thought they'd be good panel members. And so we got together and got some traction and basically decided on getting a panel together for the National Spine Foundation to really address osteoporosis. And to that effect, I got Paul Anderson, of course, involved. He's kind of the godfather and taught me a lot of stuff, and giving him credit for it. And we formed a panel of about 7 or 8 people from across the country. We have somebody from Seattle, we have somebody from Harvard, Ganesh, we have somebody from Columbia, Larry's partner, we have somebody from Kansas City. So we have representation of both neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons from around the country, and we formed the sort of our spine health bone osteoporosis task force. And fortunately, I happened to choose a lot of really great people that have been very proactive on this. And we got together, and the first thing we did was make an outline and a business plan, essentially, of what we're going to do. And that consisted of making videos for the patients, because I had done a video with Rita a couple years ago, and it was amazing how many people went to their site and looked at that, because there was just no information out there. And one thing I learned in working with the SRS when we set up a lot of the webinars and the online education platform was that that's a huge driver of where patients are going now. And when we did that, it was very obvious that we need to do more. And so we've set up a very sort of focused thing that we're both talking to patients, and now we're working on videos that we're talking to providers, particularly primary care providers, that we're answering the questions that most patients ask, and we made lists. And so we've been doing basically group associations like Tom Schuler, where we had 4 or 5 of us talking about osteoporosis, and then one-on-one kind of things where we talk about little vignettes about specific things, treatment and things along that line. And we also got together and put out a monograph that I invite you all to look at that's really terrific, that I took it back to my system and we distributed it to all the doctors. And it's really, really nice. You can download it online with a QR code, or you can just get a copy of it from Rita. But it's really, really a nice monograph that's written toward patients about treating their osteoporosis, and it's been very popular in my office. And so we're also doing a lot of research. We've got some papers in the works. We've got some surveys going out both to doctors and also to providers. I ask that if you get that survey, please fill it out, because our survey return rates are about 5 to 10% on a good day with the wind at our back. And so we're doing also, Venu, he can talk also about, we're writing a paper about the side effects of some of these medications, but we're trying to attack osteoporosis from many different angles for both the patient and providers, because there's a lot of resistance by the primary care doctors, of course, to treat this. But that's improving. Just in the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen a big change in a lot of what our community does. So it takes education and continued effort to do this. So that's kind of how this got started. Am I missing anything, Rita? But it's been really nice because we've gotten some funding from some of the companies, and that's what's really important to be able to do this. I think that one of the biggest things we can talk about, of course, is setting up a bone health program at your facility. And I'll let Daniel talk about that because he's with it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that John has hit a lot of the very, very important points. This is an area where there is treatment algorithms that are really all over the place, at different institutions, and there's not really a very clear pathway for many surgeons on how to treat these patients in terms of optimizing bone density. There are stats that 50% of women over the age of 50 undergoing spine surgery have osteoporosis, and this is a big reason why some of the complication rates we have are so high. And so I think, as John said, this is educating patients, but not only educating patients, it's educating surgeons on how to set up these programs, how to evaluate these patients. And we have an upcoming manuscript that'll be coming out. That's going to be a primer for spine surgeons on essentially how do you just start to educate yourself on this topic so that you can advocate for your patients and work more closely with the endocrinologists and other specialists that take care of this problem. So thanks so much for being here this morning.
So this medical and scientific board will get stronger and more vigorous with great gentlemen like this. I also really want to salute Dr. Geyer and his work with the Spine Health Journal, motion preservation, and all of the medical and scientific board members that continue to do really great work in addition to their busy practices, their busy academic work, etc., to push this forward on behalf of our patients. And I think that we are here today. Rita mentioned, that this is the American Heart Association of Spine, but consider this, maybe this is better than the American Heart Association of Spine, and this will be even stronger in the future. So thank you.
The last person to speak this morning is someone who I met in 2018. I joined the organization after my successful spinal fusion. I'm a general surgeon by training and needed a fusion, and was so amazed at how well I did after that surgery, and became very passionate about this mission. And that's sort of how I arrived here. And one of the first things we did when I joined the organization is we had a big party. We had the We've Got Your Back Gala. As I was planning that and working with Tom Schuler on that party, we said, we need to recognize innovation. We need to recognize leadership. And does anybody know Eric Major in the room? And Dr. Schuler said, I know Eric. I've known Eric for years. Let me call him and invite him to come. We awarded Eric the Innovator of the Year award. That was the year that K2M was acquired by Stryker. And we were just so delighted when Eric came, supported the organization, gave a phenomenal speech about how important the organization is. And I think a friendship between our organization and Eric Major really blossomed at that point in time. Fast forward a couple years after the pandemic, we reached out to Eric again and said, we're growing our board. Would you consider joining our board of directors? And without much arm twisting, Eric came and saw what we were doing, and he said, gosh, I've seen this organization for many years. It's phenomenal what's happening here, and I want to be part of this. And so we're just thrilled for your support, your volunteerism, your commitment, your vision, and it's a real honor for me to turn the microphone over now to Eric Major.
I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I think for a lot of people in the room, as the non-surgeon speaking, from an industry perspective, a lot of us enter this industry as a job, and then that job becomes a passion and a lifestyle and something that keeps pulling us back. So, I thought after Stryker Spine that I was retiring from spine, and then I continue to come back into this industry because I love the surgeons and I love the innovation and I love what we do. But in doing that and thinking about what our requirements are, not requirements, what we do as a society, the physicians are always coming together. But the concept to me, and speaking of I've spent a profession of over 30 years now in spine, and realize that I'm really proud of what we do and the patient, and we make a difference. And I know every one of you have seen various news pieces, various media pieces that talk about, okay, this is where spine doesn't work. They love that, right? And yet we see the patients that we make a difference every day in the lives of patients. Now, the physicians in this room know that. But as I learned more about what the organization was going to do and this concept of a spine alliance and the idea that we have these meetings and we come together at every society meeting for coffee or we get together and it's agnostic to company. This is about coming together and advocating for what we do to take care of patients. I see a world where in this room at the next NASS, we have 500, 600 people. We have engineers, product managers, obviously surgeons with all different types of experiences. We have sales reps. We have nurses, healthcare professionals. We have leaders, and we're coming together. Why? Because we're advocating for the patient and for our industry. And that's what got me excited. So when Tom reached out and Rita and I found out the other team that was involved, I said, this is a fantastic opportunity to create something that's different. You go to a lot of these, you get asked to get involved, but the idea here is think about the public service announcement of spine. We've committed our entire career to this. Most everybody in this room, many of you, again, I know well, we've committed our life to this. So isn't it important to let the world know about the positive impact we have? So I'm encouraging all of us to get more involved. What does that mean? You know, it's raw, it's early, it's still being put together. But Rita and Dave Poley and the team have been hitting the streets so hard with all the different societies that, again, a world by which we come together for coffee for an hour at every society meeting and talk about how we can make sure the message is getting out there. To me, that's the real beauty of what we can do here. And then with some of the studies and other things we're doing to pull those patients in through education. So my challenge to the industry professionals in the room is this is not another ask, because we get a lot of asks because there's so many societies. But this is different. This is almost a necessity for us to help get the message out that our industry helps patients around the world. So my first step into philanthropy was really with Focus. My wife and I have spent a lot of time with Ohene Babawachi in Ghana and helping children with unbelievable complex spinal pathologies. But then from there, that flywheel effect to get involved with the National Spine Health Foundation and to really understand that this is an organization that can make a difference and move the needle to help us get that message out. And think about the what's in it for me for each of you. Think about the opportunity that when you do have something in your local community, and either you're trying to do patient education or there's a negative media about spine surgery in general, we can come together and make sure we're driving the positive message of what we do. That's what got me excited. This is where my career has been, and almost everybody in this room, that's where your career has been and is going. So let's coalesce, let's come together around the Spine Alliance and get involved. And I think 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, we're going to look back to this as a pivotal moment as we're all coming together and creating this organization. So I'm very excited and appreciate everyone getting up really early in the morning for a great coffee. Rita, thank you, and thank you for your leadership. You know, again, Rita and Dave are just hitting the street every day, getting this message out. And that's what it takes. Leadership is about being out there every day and sending the message. So thank you both for that.